Don't Depend on Daddy is an unfiltered safe space, empowering young professionals to build independence in their 20s and beyond, whether it be personal, professional, or financial. Regardless of your age, relationship status, or job title, the most consistent person in your life is you. So join me and let's build our independence together. Enjoy! Hello and welcome back to Don't Depend on Daddy, the podcast. My name's Michela. I am your host, and today we are going to be talking about financial foundations and personal finance milestones to reach throughout your 20s. I'm super excited about it. I think this is going to be a really great just like reference point episode to come back to year over year. And as we get to the end of the year, a lot of these episodes are going to be more like retrospective and reflective on how to manage your money at the end of the year going into a fresh year where we have a little bit of a fresh start. Before we get into this episode, I'm going to run through the housekeeping quickly. First things first, as always, you can get $10 off the personal finance dashboard when you use the code podcast1. The Black Friday sale for the PFD has officially ended, but if you are new here and this is the first episode you're listening to, you can always use the code podcast1 for $10 off the PFD. The PFD is my, signature money management financial planning tool. It's the tool that I've used to save my first 100K, and now I've grown my net worth to almost $1 million using this tool. So it works, and it just will help you feel more confident in your overall financial picture. So you can get $10 off with the code podcast1. I am going to be running another sale, not a Black Friday sale, obviously, but as we get to the end of the year and we're thinking about 2025 planning and everyone is sort of auditing and thinking about their financial goals, I'll be running another sale. So if you want to wait and get $15 off instead of $10, feel free. But if you don't want to wait, use the code podcast1. The other quick thing for updates is own your career and own your money. So if you are someone who is looking for a gift for either a recent grad or a young professional or someone in your life who is looking to overhaul their finances and take their professional power back, I highly recommend you check out Own Your Money and Own Your Career. Those are both of my books. They're available hardcover. You can get them on Amazon or like Barnes & Noble, Books A Million. You can also get the ebook version if you have a Kindle or a Nook. I believe the Nook is the version of the Barnes & Noble Kindle. I use a Kindle. Or you can get the audio version, the audiobook version. So also, if you have Spotify Premium, you can listen to Own Your Money for free with your Spotify Premium membership. So those books are really amazing gifts. If you are gonna give someone a book, you might as well give them something that they can learn from. I'm a little biased, but I think they're fantastic. So those are the two quick housekeeping things that I'm running through. As a quick update, as you can see if you're watching on YouTube, I'm still at my parents' house on Cape Cod. I will be here through the end of the year. I apologize, the lighting is like a little bit funky. The sun is like directly in my face, so I have the shade down. There's a little bit of a shadow. Sorry, can't do anything about it. But hopefully the, talking in this video makes up for the strange lighting going on. Anyways, let's get into the juice here because I'm really excited about this episode in particular, just because I think it's very tactical and it's really helpful. Something that I have found to be really challenging, I think just in the era of being online, is sharing any hard, tangible milestones to reach at certain points throughout your 20s, just because people are so sensitive about it. So before we get into these financial milestones that I personally, so this is my experience, my perspective, take that with a grain of salt, that I think 20-somethings should aim for at different periods. I want to be super, 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 super clear that this is a guideline, okay? So I am going to be sharing ages for the sake of keeping this sort of structure and just making it easier to set tactical goals, again, because I'm finding that information is hard to find. And I think it's helpful to have these tactical goals, to have the age ranges, and to use that as a guideline or a guiding post. I think it's helpful. But they are not meant to be rigid, and they are not meant to make you feel badly about yourself if you don't match up to them exactly. So if hearing milestones and hearing ages is going to trigger you or make you feel upset, then I don't think this is a good episode for you to continue listening to. So just keep that in mind. And with that, for those of you who are interested in this, let's get into it, because I think this is, I think it's helpful. And I say all of that again to not be like, I just want to be very clear up front, because I know there are people out there who hearing things like this can feel upsetting. Anyways, we're going to go through the 5 milestones, and I have some notes up on my laptop that I'm going to be looking at, and let's just get right into it. So milestone number 1 is saving up an emergency fund. And the ideal age range for doing this is ages like 22 to 24. So this is really like that first financial goal that you are focused on when you graduate college. This is, in my opinion, the most important financial priority, even before like paying off credit card debt or anything of that sort. And the focus is in your early 20s. So by age 24, 25-ish, your goal should be to have 3 to 6 months of living expenses saved in a high yield savings account. So I use Ally Bank as my high yield savings account of choice. This is not sponsored. I have just used Ally for years and years and years. And the reason why I like Ally is because they have savings buckets, which I think some other high yield savings accounts have savings buckets. But again, I've been using Ally, so like I'm not going to switch to a different account unnecessarily. But the savings buckets make it really easy for you to segment your various savings goals. So within my Ally savings account, I have an emergency fund, and that has a little less than 6 months of my monthly expenses. And I would say 6 months is a threshold to aim for if you feel uncertain in your job, or you want to pursue entrepreneurship as your career path. If you feel comfortable and confident in your job, 3 months is a totally perfect goal. I have 6 months just because I work for myself. So if God forbid, my business were to go down the drain, or something were to happen, or I got hurt or whatever and I couldn't work, I'd have money to sustain me to hopefully bridge that gap before either finding a job or getting back to work. So 3 months is a really great target if you have a regular job. And then after 3 months, you can start balancing either adding to your emergency fund with other goals or move on to something else. To figure out how much you need to save for your emergency fund, you need to identify your monthly spend. So what are you spending on your essentials and your non-essentials on a monthly basis? So think about like rent, utility, grocery, transportation, going out to eat, going to the gym, all those kinds of things. What's an estimate of what that monthly outflow is? If you use a tool like the Personal Finance Dashboard to track your expenses, this is a really easy number to land on. If you don't have a tool and you're feeling a little bit lost, I recommend you get one. I also do want to say, I didn't say this at the beginning, I do have a resource library on my website that has both free and paid resources, spreadsheets, and budgeting apps, money management tools, etc., of all varying degrees that I have tried and tested and approved. So if you are looking for a tool, maybe you don't want to use a spreadsheet, you want to use something a little bit more automated or digitized or whatever that's connected to your accounts, go to the resources linked in the show notes here, and you can go through all the ones that I, again, personally like. But to be able to find that target, you need to know your monthly outflow. And let's say you spend $5,000 per month, then your baseline emergency fund should be $15,000. That number can feel really overwhelming and really cumbersome. I understand. Take it day by day, week by week, month by month. Again, the goal here is to have this done by like 25. So it's not going to happen in the first 6 months. Hopefully it does. For some people it will, depending on what you do for work and if you're able to live at home and what your situation looks like. But don't be discouraged if it takes you, a couple of years to save up that amount of money. That's normal for it to take some time. So aim to save $500 first, then reach $1,000. I think $1,000 should be that like bare minimum baseline. $1,000 isn't really enough to cover like big major emergencies or to bridge the gap if you were to lose your job or something, but it's a really great first target to reach. And then work your way up to that final goal. And make sure, again, you're putting this money in a high yield savings account. I just want you to think about your emergency fund as like a financial fire extinguisher. Okay, so I know that this is not like a sexy financial goal. I know it probably is hard to think about prioritizing it when there are likely other things that you want to be doing, but think about it as the financial fire extinguisher that is going to help you put out a poor situation should you find yourself in one. Emergencies happen. But it's really designed to help, again, bridge the gap if you lose your job, or if you happen to get into like a car accident, or your dog dies, or your dog has to go to the vet or something. Like, these are real emergencies that can be very, very, very expensive. And if you don't have the money set aside, it just puts you in a little bit more of a precarious position. So this money that you put aside in your emergency fund is not for like a spontaneous weekend trip. It's not to buy yourself a new phone. It's for real emergencies. So again, keep that in mind. And if it helps to list out like what would constitute an emergency, just as a reminder, like I would go through that exercise, because emergency is subjective. So it's going to feel a little bit different for everyone. So again, milestone number 1 is saving up that emergency fund, and the goal is to do this by the time you turn 25. Milestone number 2 is to start thinking about your retirement savings. So retirement does feel like a lifetime away. I do also think a lot of younger people, and I hate to do like the Gen Z thing, but I do think a lot of Gen Z feels like they're never going to retire. Retirement is impossible, or they're going to die before they retire. The world is going to end before they retire. And I totally get that. But that also could not happen, right? Like, you could very much so reach age 65 and everything's perfectly fine, and the world the world will have kept spinning, and you could have no money because you didn't think about retirement at all. So, you want to think about that, because your biggest wealth building asset is time. So the age range to start thinking about retirement, again, we're balancing some of these goals here, would be 22 to 26, 27-ish. By 26, 27, you kind of want to have a good cadence with your retirement savings. Ideally, you would do that earlier, but by 27, having a percentage of your money going towards your retirement, really being able to think about not necessarily maxing out your retirement accounts, but increasing your contributions year over year. That's a really great target. So at 22, like when you're first starting a job, or, whatever age you start your job, maybe you went to grad school, so you're starting at 24 or 25, again, totally fine. But at your first job, you want to be contributing, I would say 1 to 2% from day one towards your retirement account, regardless of if your company matches. If your company matches, then you want to aim to at least get the full company match no matter what. So let's say that your company will match your retirement contributions up to 3%, then you want to make sure you're contributing at least 3% towards your retirement the first day you start working, whether you start working at 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, does not matter, because that is free money in your pocket. If you can't do the full amount of the match, then, 1 to 2% or half of the match, good target. But if you can get there and it's not inhibiting your ability to eat, then I recommend you start with that free match. By age 26, if you started working at 22 and you see a little bit of like that linear job progression, which people see that, 10%, 11% is a great goal to get to. When I was in my corporate job, every year I would increase my 401k by 1%. It was a very, very minimal change in my take-home pay. I didn't even really feel it or notice it. But obviously, long term, that small increase, when it's in the market and it's moving over time, can make a really big difference, significantly more than just 1% of a difference. So really think about how you are going to be increasing your retirement contribution throughout your 20s and into your 30s. Obviously, a great goal as you get older and start earning more is to meet those annual maximums on your 401k or your IRA, or both if you can afford to. But increasing it year over year, 1%, 2%, 3%, if you're feeling good, is great. And really having these targets of like, by age 26, I want to hit 10%, or by age 28, I want to hit 10%. Again, these are, you put them in the context of your own situation, but having those targets is really, really helpful to just make those year over year adjustments. Moving into milestone number 3. This is where you're thinking about your credit score and building your credit foundation. And this is something to start thinking about in like your mid-20s, so like 25 to 27. Those few years after college is really focused on the basics and just getting things set up. Obviously, we'd love to have a credit card again in college, right when you graduate college, but pick and choose your battles. So if that feels overwhelming to you, then I wouldn't worry about your credit until maybe a little bit later, because there are other ways that you can build credit without using credit cards. But the goal is to start thinking about your credit score, because your credit score is like your adult GPA. So the age range that I have tagged on here is 25 to 27, because again, early 20s, you're focused on building up that emergency fund and making sure you're hitting those very minimum retirement contributions so you can get your money working in the market. By your mid-20s, hopefully you're feeling a little more grounded with those first two milestones, and you can pivot to optimizing a little bit, and that's where this credit conversation starts to come into play. It really does matter what your credit score is, especially if you want to get approved for an apartment on your own, get approved for a mortgage if you ever want to buy a home, get any type of loan like a car loan. Sometimes even job background checks will check it. If you're getting approved for an apartment, they will check your credit. They will do a background check on you. So those are really important things to keep in mind if you want to be like a functioning independent adult in society without needing to have a guarantor or a co-signer on things, which there's nothing wrong with those things, but not everybody has that. So it's important to make sure you're taking these steps to mitigate any issues that could come up in the future. So the goal is by 27 to have what's considered good credit. So good credit would be a score of 700 or above. So how can you do this? And there are 3 key strategies that you can implement. First would be ensuring from the get-go you are always paying your bills on time, because paying your bills on time, like utility bills and your rent and everything, and making like student loan payments, those all impact your credit score, even if you're not using a credit card. Obviously, if you have a credit card and you're putting money on it and you're paying that off on time every month, that is going to help improve your credit score and show like a long credit history. But if you don't have a credit card, you can still build credit either through like showing proof of payment for your utility bills. You can open up a secured card to make those payments. There are tons of online resources where, you can build your credit in a more secure way. But overarchingly, you want to make sure you're paying all of your bills on time so that nothing is going to collections, because that again will impact your credit score. If you put anything on your credit card, so now we're going to talk about like smart credit habits. If you're using a credit card and you're putting anything on that card, you want to make sure you're paying it off in full and you're never, ever, ever carrying a balance. And that is, I think, like the most important thing to think about when you are building credit or opening a credit card. Never use those buy now, pay laters. I don't think you need to use a Klarna or anything of that sort. If you don't have the money to buy something in full at that time, just don't buy it. Save up for it and then put it on your card when you have the cash, and then pay the card off right away. But paying your bills on time is obviously going to really help get that score up. The other 2 things are keeping your credit utilization under 30%. So this is the percentage of your credit line that you use. And 30% is really the top of what you should be using on a month-to-month basis. So you can check your credit line with your card issuer or with a tool like Credit Karma that will pull all of your different cards in. Credit Karma, Experian, both great resources. They'll pull all of your cards in. You can see your full credit line if you have more than one credit card. But for example, let's say you have a credit line that's $5,000, 30% of that would be $1,500. So on average, you wouldn't want to be putting more than $1,500 on your credit card per month. And then the last tip here is to make sure you're not opening too many lines of credit at once or getting too many hard inquiries at the same time. Each credit card that you open up is a hard inquiry on your credit, and this can temporarily reduce your score. So if you are opening a lot of credit cards, you're getting a lot of inquiries on your credit report, that is going to like be a warning sign to issuers or lenders that, you're opening up a lot of cards. It could be a red flag that you need access to quick cash. And, then in the future, that could impact your credit score. It may not be possible for you to get loans and all that kind of stuff. So be aware of that. 1, maybe 2 credit cards a year is like kind of the most. All that to say, your credit is really important. The focus for your credit to really boost your score above 700 is in your mid-20s. But these are all things you can also be doing simultaneously, just as like a cognizant person in your early 20s. If you're just practicing good credit card spending habits, and you're paying your bills on time, like you're building and boosting your credit before this mid-20s point anyways. So by the time you reach 25, 26, 27, like your credit score is probably already going to be fine. But if you're focused on other things in your early 20s, then this is something to pay attention to when you reach that mid-20s point. Moving on to milestone number 4. This is where things start to get a little less like foundational and a little bit more fun. These last two are more about investing and growing your wealth beyond just these basics, like beyond the basics of just retirement, 401k stuff, and then saving up an emergency fund. So milestone 4 is establishing more than one stream of income. And this is more of a later 20s milestone. So think like 27, 28, 29. At this point in your 20s, again, if everything was linear, which I know is not how everybody's life is, if everything was linear, by that point in time, maybe you've been in your corporate job for a couple of years and you're feeling good about your retirement and you're approved for your apartment. Maybe you own a home. I don't know. You could be thinking about getting married, or maybe you're not getting married at all. I'm not at this point. So, it just really depends on your life situation. But later on in your 20s, a lot of people tend to feel a little bit more established in their lives. And so this is when you have the brain capacity and space to start thinking about more than one income stream. So that could be a part-time job or a side hustle in addition to your corporate job. It could be thinking about entrepreneurship. Like there's so many paths here. But diversifying your income makes it possible for you to not only continue to build just like general wealth and build up that financial foundation, but it can allow you to add more and more savings and investments to your broader portfolio and just expand your reach and expand the opportunities that become available to you. So having a day job is great, but I think we've seen too over the last year that the job market is fairly unsteady, and even jobs that have traditionally been considered not even recession proof, but just like reliable are no longer that. And people are getting laid off with no warning. They have no idea it's coming. I've seen lots of my friends get laid off. I've seen people in my family get laid off. I've seen emergencies happen. And so it's important, I think, to keep in mind that a job, like a 9-to-5 job that was traditionally considered reliable and like a real job, is not that anymore, unfortunately. So it's unfortunate that having an additional income is becoming a little bit more of a requirement as opposed to a choice. But rather than looking at it as a chore or something that you have to do, I think it's a really great thing to look at as an opportunity. Because not only is additional income something that can help you build your financial foundation, like I mentioned, but it's also an opportunity to learn and develop new skills and potentially explore an additional career path. And so I'll use myself as the example here, but Break Your Budget has totally changed my life, not only in the sense of it's allowed me to grow my wealth and create the sense of control and freedom over my life, but I've learned actually so much from doing this. And if I were to return to a corporate setting, which my mind is open, I may do that. I hope to not, but it's something that who knows what my life holds for me, right? Like, I don't know. If I were to return to a corporate setting, I would probably pursue a different type of job than what I did before I quit my job a couple of years ago, just because I've learned a totally new set of skills. And so I've just discovered this part of me that I didn't know existed through my side hustle. That's created extra income for me. It's allowed me to develop different skills. It's opened my eyes to different career paths. And I've just learned so much. So I would have never been able to reach that point if I never did this. So think of a side hustle as an opportunity for you to like lean into a passion or explore an area of interest. So for example, my side hustle that I'm, planting seeds for thinking about when I move to Chicago is to potentially get a job working at a coffee shop, like as a barista, because I really want to learn the coffee business because it's something that I potentially want to pursue in the future. But I've never worked a job like that. I don't know how coffee shops run. I don't know the back end. I don't know the business. I don't know the profits. Like it's something that I need to learn about. And so instead of looking at getting like a little part-time job as a chore or as something that's like annoying, I'm looking at it as this is a cool opportunity for me to learn something. And if it ends up being not what I want, like that's totally fine. There's no pressure there. And that's the beauty of additional income streams is they, at the beginning at least, are low stakes, low pressure. And usually when you put not a lot of pressure on it, that's when you're able to actually evaluate a opportunity or a situation for what it is, as opposed to it being like this really stressful thing. So think about what a potential additional income stream could be for you. And a few examples would be like a freelancing job or a part-time job. I have a friend who she has a full-time job and she also works part-time at Free People as like a sales associate. And she has a little community there and she's met tons of girls and she gets a discount on the clothes and it's a couple hours a week and it's totally great, right? Like, I don't think there's any shame in that. And I as much as I hate to see the corporate world be so greedy and like, ruin people's lives, honestly, by laying them off in the middle of the night with no warning and no severance, what I am finding to be the silver lining about this is it's normalizing different job opportunities and different career paths, where I think that's really valuable. I think it's so valuable to be able to pursue other things without judgment, without shame, just because you're interested in it. So I don't know. I think there's a silver lining there. And I think changing the way that you view part-time work or side hustles or freelance work will do a lot of wonders for exploring those opportunities and finding new ideas. So to reiterate, the goal isn't just extra cash, it's building financial resilience, and it's providing you the opportunity to explore some of your passions, which again is so, so valuable, especially in your 20s. Moving on to the last milestone here, milestone number 5. This is, again, later 20s, so like 27, 28, 29, and then getting into your 30s would be investing beyond retirement and making different investments that aren't just in a 401k or an IRA. Because I feel like, at least in the personal finance online space, we see a lot of conversation around IRAs and retirement accounts, which is very important. But brokerage accounts and other types of investments totally get demonized because they're not tax advantaged. But when you have all of your money in tax advantaged accounts, you can't access those accounts without penalties or without fees until you retire. So there is a lot of value in having non-retirement investments for those either shorter or mid to long term goals. I know that was like short, mid, and long goals that, but it's different reasons why you would invest, I guess, beyond retirement. So like, for example, I have money in a brokerage account that I don't necessarily plan anytime soon to use. But if I were in the next couple of years to buy a home, I may draw down from those accounts depending on, what my other accounts are looking like, my financial situation, what the market's looking like. But that's money that I can access for different purchases or different events in my life. Whereas if that money was in a retirement account, I wouldn't be able to use it for a purchase of that sort. So graduating from retirement accounts to broader investments is something that I recommend you do when you're ready. And like the element for being ready is you've got your retirement accounts on lock. You're able to actively contribute to those. You have an emergency fund. You're feeling comfortable at work. At that point, you don't have any debt or credit card debt. Student loan debt, that's a little bit different, or like maybe a car loan or something, but you don't have any credit card debt or super high interest debt. At that point, it's a great time to start thinking about, okay, maybe I have some additional income or some discretionary income that I'd like to put towards different types of investments. This is where the brokerage account and non-retirement investing goals come into play. And the reason why I place these at your late 20s is because usually it takes you all of your 20s to, pay off credit card debt if you had it, to start actively contributing to those retirement accounts, to get your spending underway, to start paying down student loans or a car loan or something, and like really get your finances in order. I think a lot of people don't reach a point where they're comfortable to invest beyond that until they're 28, 29, and even into your 30s. Maybe you're not even there yet, and that's normal. And part of, again, why I wanted to add age ranges on here is because I think it's important to talk about how you can do things for your finances later in life. Like you don't have to do everything by the time you turn 25, which is not something that we see a lot on social media. And I mean, I've definitely contributed to it because I used that hook of I saved 100K by the time I was 25. That's marketing. It's true, but it's marketing. And I think it's important to remember that these big numbers are attention grabbers, okay? And it's not normal for everyone. And generally, myself included, which I've discussed, there are some extenuating circumstances to being able to reach those points. For me, I lived at home for kind of about a year during COVID, and that obviously made a big difference in my ability to save up. I did reach that milestone before COVID, like I moved and everything, but there are, again, things that help bolster that number for me and for pretty much everyone else who has said it, because a lot of the people who do claim that, like I have relationships with and I've spoken to, and my point is it's important to remember that when you see these big milestones, there's always more to the story and they're outlier situations. So reaching the ability to invest beyond your retirement account at a later date is normal. Like it takes time. So The benefit of investing beyond retirement accounts is that, you have some more accessible assets with fewer restrictions. So that goes back to that point about retirement accounts being tax advantaged. When they're tax advantaged, there are restrictions around what you can access and when. But it also allows you to diversify your wealth across different types of investments. So these different types of investments could be individual stocks, emerging markets, real estate, if that's something that you're interested in. And they can help you achieve those medium to longer term goals. So like I mentioned earlier too, buying a home, maybe starting a business, funding any type of major life purchase. Again, that's going to vary person to person, timeline to timeline. Everything is going to look a little bit different for each individual person, and that's totally fine. But the primary goal of investing beyond retirement accounts is to create that broader financial portfolio that provides opportunities beyond just the traditional retirement planning that we are force-fed, which is super important, but not the only thing to think about, because you can only access funds in your retirement account at retirement age. And again, it demonizes brokerage accounts and other investment opportunities because those aren't tax advantaged. So I like to think of the difference between retirement accounts and like brokerage accounts as with retirement accounts, whether you're in a Roth or a traditional, you're either taxed on the way in and can withdraw tax-free on the way out, or you contribute tax-free on the way in and then you pay taxes on the withdrawals on the way out. With brokerage accounts, you are contributing taxed income because it's income that you receive after you pay taxes on it. And then when you withdraw that money, you're also paying capital gains tax. So you're taxed on the way in technically, and you're also taxed on the way out. So it's just important to remember that those are the key differences, but the benefit is the flexibility and the ability to access funds. And also there aren't limits on how much you can put into a brokerage account. So, with retirement accounts, 401ks, you have contribution limits, and maybe you're having a really good year, or you've had a really good couple of years and you've maxed those accounts out and you still have money to invest. Like, you want to get that money moving in the market depending on your goals. So there is definitely a place for brokerage investing and other types of investing in your financial strategy. It just doesn't have to be something that you prioritize in your early to mid 20s. It could be something that you think about in your later 20s. And again, that's okay. You still have plenty of time at 28, 29, and 30 to put money into different types of accounts. So the key with investing beyond retirement, but really investing at any point in time, is just consistency. You want to be consistent. It's okay if it's only $50 or $20 or $100 or whatever. You want to build the habit of investing and making those investments. And you'll learn by doing, and there are lots of resources online. I also have a free investing guide, which I'll make sure is linked in the show notes. And I also talk about this a lot inside Own Your Money. There's a whole chapter on investing and scenarios and investment types and an investment glossary and like lots of information on this. So leverage those resources and make empowered decisions. Because again, as you go throughout your 20s, the goal is for your wealth to grow long term. And you do that by diversifying your accounts, diversifying your positions, and really thinking strategically about what those goals are. Anyways, I hope this was helpful. I'll do a quick summary here. So milestone number 1, saving up an emergency fund. The goal is to do this like 22 to 25-ish. Milestone 2 would be thinking about retirement accounts. That's going to be the same early 20s age, like 22 to 25, 26. Moving on to milestone number 3 is building up your credit score and really hitting that good credit, which is a score of 700 and above. And that's something to focus on throughout your 20s. But, 25 to 27 is a good target. By 27, you want to have good credit. By moving on to milestone number 4, this is where you're thinking about diversifying your income and hopefully adding in an additional income stream. This is something to think about in your like mid to late 20s, so 26, 27, 28, getting into your late 20s. And then milestone number 5 is investing beyond retirement. Great place to do this or to start thinking about it is in your late 20s, but obviously for all of these, the earlier, the better. Anyways, just keep in mind, these milestones are not a strict checklist. They're guidelines, and everyone's financial journey is going to look a little bit different. But the most important thing you can do is to just start now at whatever age you're at listening to this episode. So I hope this was helpful. If you have questions about anything, obviously let me know. Remember, personal finance is very personal. Your path is unique. And yeah, I'll catch you next week in the next one.